Item on the agenda, I just want to recognize the Information Technology Department here at RIOC for receiving this year's Showcase Agency of the Year Award. Kudos to Mike Mario, Govind Vesdeep, and Joe Galletti for receiving this award. They do an outstanding job, and I think a lot of it goes unnoticed because they're behind the scenes or in the trenches, so to speak. So they were recognized this year by New York State. And for those, I think it's on the Roosevelt Islander website, the blog, in terms of Mike's acceptance speech, as well as an award that I'll show you in a few minutes that we received that we have posted up. Actually, it's posted on the wall in the lobby area. So thank you, Mike, and his team for that. Okay. Third item on the agenda, Roosevelt Island Emergency Management Planning. It's been a while since we had a meeting, so Hurricane Irene, which happened in mid-August, we had basically an all-out effort with that hurricane planning and the event itself. And without getting into details, there were a lot of lessons learned from that experience. And I just want to show you some of the conditions that existed during that weekend. Mostly at Lighthouse Park, where we experienced flooding and damage to our seawall. So if you look at this picture here, this was caused by the storm surge on the northwest corner of the seawall at Lighthouse Park. You can see where the water came into Lighthouse Park and flooded the northern tip. You see the storm surge flooding and coming almost to the top of the seawall in these two pictures here. You see flooding conditions throughout, and then various trees falling throughout the park. This is in Capobianco Park and also in Lighthouse Park, which is where we experienced most of the damage. Again, there were several lessons learned. I think overall, the corporation and the team did a fantastic job. We had staff around the clock during that time to handle any particular incident that may have arisen. And one of the things that we did subsequent to that is that we are in constant state of training. Prior to the incident, in the springtime of this year, we all received incident command training. I would say 80% of the staff received basic level ICS training. So that we're very informed in terms of the policies and the structure and the management of incident command. Others have received a more advanced training. They either had it or are continuing to receive it. Certain members of our staff received in the past month or so advanced training on design of incidences or drills, communications during drills or in actual incidents, and as well as emergency management planning. One of the questions that came up right after this particular incident was, what about the community involvement? So that's something that we are going to consider and start planning for again, and involving the community in terms of the planning with VERA and CERT and some of the other stakeholders here in the community in terms of making sure that everyone's informed and everyone understands their particular role, because it really takes a concerted effort when we are facing
Was CERT
an
used
emergency.
at all?
I'm sorry?
Was CERT used at all?
No.
Why not?
CERT, because the way it's structured right now, CERT falls under the Office of Emergency
Right.
Management, and they have to be activated by
Right.
the Office of Emergency Management.
Right.
So CERT had a general activation, and
Right.
CERT members were directed to go to the nearest evacuation center, which was at Newcomers High School. And so I think 3 members went down there and helped basically arrange supplies. There were some evacuees who were there, and not too many, and it was for more or less a limited duration. So the New York City ICS attempts to provide at least 48-hour notice for evacuation, to try and mostly 72-hour notice. So the storm is tracked pretty closely, as you've seen. So usually they have a pretty good read on it, and I would have a fair amount of confidence. One thing the community always wonders about, is there an emergency plan
Mhm.
Is there an evacuation plan? And finally, why don't people know it?
Mhm.
So the reason why people don't know it is because there are security concerns on some elements of the plan. But the plan exists in some form. I saw it, Matt Katz saw it a few years
Mhm.
ago, and I imagine it's been updated any number of times since, where there's a matrix of threat, probability, and response that's considered. So in that sense, it's a mature, developed plan, and it's done in concert with OEM.
Absolutely.
So certainly we'd be looking forward to further meetings
Mhm.
and, where possible, publicizing issues for response to the community. I know that RIOC did a good job during the emergency,
Mhm.
but people still are nervous. People still need to get information, and what can one say? If one doesn't seek things out, one doesn't see things.
Mhm.
So whatever ways evolve, become available to disseminate information among the community would be helpful. So I know that building management companies were kept in the loop.
Right.
Whatever it takes to get the information out, whether there's announcements on the various kiosks, whether there's announcements along the bus lines. There was certainly ample notice where mass transit was shutting down,
Right.
but there always needs to be another way of getting the word out.
Right. We employed various levels of communication. We used, I think, for the very first time, an extensive use of social media here on the island. So we used our Facebook page. We used, I think Rick also posted on his blog. We used our advisories. We used whatever methods. We also had the hotline going as well. And public safety was the only one that was in operation throughout the entire time. We had our public transportation, both the buses and the tram, operating longer than the city had their public transportation operating. And we also brought it back sooner. And granted, we're a small island, but we had it operating longer, I think, until the evening, and we brought it back sooner the next day, I think around noon or 2 o'clock the next day. But it was treacherous out there. I was here, and I commend those folks that left their homes and the safety of their homes and their families to come to work, and it was something to be proud of too, because we didn't know what to expect. It was a state emergency, it was a citywide emergency, and speaking to a plan, we fall under the jurisdiction of New York City. So at the end of the day, we fall under New York City's evacuation plan. Okay, but there are certain things that we can do to make sure that we assist in that effort. And that's where I want to be able to take this next, is that engage the staff to make sure they have the proper training, and also engage the community to make sure they're involved in the decision-making process and in terms of the planning. Because once it really comes down to something happening, people have to understand their specific roles and responsibilities. And we can't be responsible for lay people unless OEM assigns a CERT team here. So in answer to your question.
Well, that's the annoying part. I think that's why the people on the island joined CERT. So in an
Right.
emergency, we could help out people
Right,
on the
but we
island.
have
not
no-
to,
we have no
I know
control
you're not.
over
I'm saying
it. Right.
maybe the people who
It's
trained in
back down
CERT,
to
we have our own
OEM.
volunteer organization instead of
Yeah.
CERT, so that we don't go off. What happened to the phone system in public safety?
Verizon's lines were down, so we had to do some type of patchwork and using cell phones to get service back up, and I think we transferred some lines, but it was out of our control. We lost.
Do we have a backup system now, so that can't happen again?
Well, it wasn't our system per se.
No, I know it wasn't, but does our phone
Verizon.
system, do we have another way?
Yeah, we have
that
cell
can-
phones and we have radios to communicate. So people, if their phone was working in their home, they can call and we publicized it too, that the cell phone, the phone lines, the main lines for public safety were not working, and we put out an advisory to call this number if, in the case of an emergency, and it was, I believe, a
Did
cell
all the
phone.
Verizon phones go down on the island?
Not the
No,
landline,
no,
it was-
All the, that's what I'm saying, did all the landlines
Yeah,
go
the
down?
fiber
No.
optic services did not go
No.
down.
So that's, do we have one of the, a
We-
backup of another line in public, I mean, if anybody needs a backup.
Well, I think what we've learned is that when we do publicize, we should probably put both telephone numbers, because it's always possible that they're going to go down, a landline in a storm.
Right.
So we have two separate lines that we can publicize?
We have cell phone numbers as well.
We
and if
have, we
needed
have
to-
multiple lines in public safety, but unfortunately, those lines went down. So I guess what you're saying is that we have FiOS and then do we
Yeah, I'm
have the
saying-
regular POTS
And
lines?
fail,
Yeah.
just fail
Right.
over the POTS
Right.
lines. I mean,
Yeah,
some
if the
vendors
POTS
can
line
do that.
fails, we have
The what
backups,
lines?
they,
Right.
plain old telephone set.
Plain old telephone
Plain old
lines.
telephone set, POTS.
Right.
Yeah, we need more than POTS for public safety, I mean, we need to get them on FiOS or something or other, or something. So
Well, any system can go down, the question
Well,
is,
yeah,
yeah.
Right.
the chances of
Multiple
the two of them
systems
going
and
down at
then
the same
publicize
time are
both.
less
And-
likely
and
than one.
Do we have arrangements with the vendors so that if the number automatically bounces
matter,
or
switch over,
before
they
it
do that
to,
now
the
automatically,
other
yeah.
number?
Right, and that's
Sure.
part of the lessons learned. There were a lot of things that we did well and certain things that we can improve on. And one thing that I have yet to schedule is, I forgot the exact term for this, but it's sort of like a debriefing. Like a
Postmortem.
Postmortem or a post-action plan is what they call it in ICS, a post-action plan. And I was hoping to do that a lot sooner, but busy and other things. But that's something that I want to have scheduled with the staff and talk about things we can do to improve for the next event, because there will be a next event. So.
Yeah.
As you continue, keep in mind that there was no hurricane emergency here. We had a lot of rain and a lot of wind. We've had almost as much, I've seen Octagon, I've seen Lighthouse Park underwater before. I think some others have been here
With the
long.
nor'easter, yeah, it was underwater.
Say that?
The nor'easter we used 10 years ago. The nor'easter we had here was underwater.
Yeah, exactly. We've had a lot of the nor'easters here. It wasn't a storm surge, by the way. It was a lot of rain and a high tide.
Mhm.
Surges, hurricane surges.
Okay.
It's just a lot of water is what we had to deal with, and a lot of wind. We had it before. We had nothing threatened life here. We had a major physical emergencies, or medical emergencies, that we had to conduct some kind of personal evacuation to hospitals and things like that. No trees came crashing into people's apartments, which they could have,
Right.
but we actually got away clean. An emergency of this kind, if no one's dead or even seriously injured, the rest of it's just trees and money, which we can come up with.
Right, but
I'm gonna advise one more thing.
Right.
I don't know if they fixed the seawall over in that park, over in Ravenswood Park yet.
No.
Get photography of that as soon as you can, because our seawall is constructed very similar to theirs. And, I've been bitching and moaning about seawall for years, especially in the area of Lighthouse Park, but elsewhere too. And we've yet to address it. Congresswoman's gonna try and find us some money if we can make a case. Photography of that collapsed seawall will help us make a case. So let's get some quality
Right.
photography of it.
One of the things that we're gonna do as the next step is.
No, I mean before they start fixing it. I mean tomorrow.
Well, we have to do an assessment, and we need to update the Army Corps of Engineer assessment that they did, I don't know,
Or
10
contact
years
them and
ago.
find out if they've done,
Right.
as part of their pre-assessment, if they've taken detailed photography and
Okay.
measurements of it.
They're aware of it. We've been contacting the Army Corps of Engineers, and they actually,
The idea is
Or
if we're doing
funding that.
it's called a failure analysis, based upon the storm that's a known event. The system, the seawall system failed. So we just say we want to study it in relation to our own seawall, since it's in the same place.
They did a major study on this some years ago. Do we still have a copy? 'Cause I
Yes.
do.
we
Yes,
have
I
a
do.
They're-
copy of
they're
it.
And we wanna update it.
We'd like to try to get it
Yeah.
updated,
Sure.
and they were here about a year ago.
We have to pay them money for an update like that.
Right.
And they, at that point, didn't think it was necessary, our seawall wasn't in such a dire that they would fund any type of study or anything at this particular point. Now, there is some issues with the steam pipe. And
Yeah.
They do shut down the steam pipe then, for some reason, so we contacted them, actually, that the possibility may shut down.
This is a complicated thing, Steve, because we tried to deal with this 6 or 8 years ago. The former administrations run together. But they were talking at the time about whether we putting mini steam plants elsewhere on the island, like in the hospital, for specific uses, or do they need that pipe running along the east side, and what, it's a real weakness in the system, by the way, to have that, you know, that's a hollow, there's nothing behind the wall, but a hollow space with a pipe running through it. At least there's all backfilled and stuff over on this side, because we watched them rebuild it 25 years ago, you know, when they were rebuilding them all. This side, and it's like, you know, everything is just inching along little by little, but you get smacked upside the head like Irene did to it. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, so it